Welcome to the Handyman Pros Radio Show. Home improvement and maintenance tips from the pros. This episode, Knock Knock, Who's There? A discussion about interior doors. Thanks for listening to another edition of the Handyman Pros Radio Show, where our goal is to help you save time, money, and aggravation. This edition is entitled Knock Knock, Who's There? A discussion about interior doors. To help me explain, I'm here with my ever-cheerful co-host and old buddy, John. John, what's been happening this week?
Hey, Larry, glad to be back on the podcast this week. So, this week I've been working on some more wood rise. It never ends again. And
it's
also
like every week.
Exactly.
It's almost like we don't need to discuss it because it's every freaking week.
Exactly. So that's kind of been what's been going on, and doing some still working around my house on some things too, and fixing a few things on the inside of my house.
On the inside, yeah. So I have to do a big quote on. I have an interior door project. So it's a little commercial building, and it's got 22 interior doors that They actually need refinishing. One or two of them might need to be replaced. But anyway, it really brought up our topic for this week. We've talked about doing some things on doors, so we thought we'd start with doors on interior doors. Why not, right? Everybody's got I shouldn't say everybody. Most people have multiple interior doors in their houses, and I guess a lot of people don't really think about them. But I always think about them because for me, for whatever reason, particularly on the rental side, some of the interior doors get damaged, and they do this and they do that. So I thought we would start with a little conversation about door quality and/or like what an interior door is different from an exterior door. Exterior doors have issues on needing to be weather resistant and things like that, but interior doors not quite so much. So interior doors are largely what, John? Are they decorative? Or what describes a good interior door versus a lesser quality interior door?
Well, there's a couple different qualities of doors that most people come across. One's a hollow core door, which means that it's really just a framed up door on the outside, and it has kind of a skin over it. And that's your classic. A lot of them are the six panel doors, things like that. They're very lightweight, and then you've got some of the upper end doors that are solid doors, and then they come in sizes that are 8 feet tall to your standard size doors.
Right. So basically 80 inches, and they can be anywhere from 24 inches wide to 20. They can be thinner than that. I've seen 18-inch doors, which is pretty small, but usually a small closet doors can be 18, but up to 36. There's actually one in this job we're looking at that's a 48-inch wide single door, which is really a wide single door. And then you have French doors and things like that, which is two doors that come together. But yeah, that's a good start on quality. So basically hollow core versus solid core doors. What kind of, just give our customers an idea, or our listeners an idea of differences in cost. My opinion is hollow core doors tend to be quite a bit less expensive.
Oh, they're very much less expensive. So this is like anything in the building industry. It goes from very inexpensive to sky's the limit.
Right.
So, I've got a friend of mine that has some very tall, beautiful doors on the inside of his house that are solid core that are just I don't even know what they cost. This is a very high-end home, but most of the hollow core doors are probably in the neighborhood of about $40.
Yeah, 40 and up. It depends on the size.
40,
right. Depends on the size.
A standard door, I think, is somewhere around there. By the time, just call it 50 and a little bit more. I don't know. It's been a while since I really bought, a hollow core door, but you can get a lot of them standard for around that price.
Yep, they're right in that range. They're $50 to $75.
And then that goes all the way up. How much you want to spend.
That's right. How much you want to spend.
Right.
So
and and I'll tell you, there's a difference.
Of course,
there's a noticeable difference when you go ahead and swing a door on the inside that's a solid door. It's a totally different feel than a hollow core.
Yeah, different feel. So what happens to a door, causing it to need to be repaired? What happens to a door?
When it puts you in a jam?
Boom, boom. Awesome. So there's one. I'm just going to throw out. I'm going to throw out what I've seen. So one of the biggest ones that I've seen, and then I know there's several different things, but one of the things I've seen is a change in flooring. Right. So somebody comes in and they put carpet in one room. Say they have hardwoods in one floor and they put carpet in the other room, and the door opens into the carpet room. Right. That's one of the things that I've seen has actually caused doors to fail. Have you had that experience?
I've seen it. I've seen it happen. Now personally, it hasn't happened in my house because my doors have always been cut up. But yes, I've seen it happen in other locations.
Yeah, I've had it happen several times.
You know, this is typical, and you bring up a good point. You know, you get the door that's dragging on the ground,
dragging on the carpet, dragging on the ground. Yeah, it can drag on the ground too. I have yet to see that, but I have seen doors that don't open because somebody put tile in and they didn't trim the bottom of the door, and the door actually binds. It binds against the tile.
That's right. That's right. Because when you put tile in, you're generally going to put in a 3/4 inch subfloor or some hardy board.
You're going to raise it up a little, just a small amount.
Yeah.
It raises up.
But it doesn't take a whole lot before you get interference.
Interference with the door, right? So that's one of the reasons. One of the other reasons, and we had talked a little bit about this before the show, but what happens if you actually get a little shifting in the house, right?
So there's two things that happen there. The shifting in the house can throw a door out of plumb, and then there's also what happens over time is that the hinges will come loose, and usually it'll be the upper hinge on the door because it's carrying a lot of weight.
Right.
And that those screws will start to loosen up and pull out.
So that's actually another reason on how doors need to be repaired, right? So they actually has to do with how it's attached or how the hinges come off, right? So the wall can actually get out of plumb. That's generally you're looking at that in an older house, right? And both John and I have done a lot of work. I mean, I know in my experience, I've worked on houses built back from 1812 and out, and really old houses, of course, you get 100 years of settling, and trust me, doors get out of square. Boy, do they get out of square. But even in newer houses, in 20-year-old houses, you can get just enough to give you a little bit of problem. So that's one thing. But then the other thing is what John was just mentioning, and is the fact that the actual mounting system, the hinges basically, can get out of skew, if you want to call it that, or things can happen just within the hinges. So that's an additional reason of why doors need to be repaired. And then, of course, the third reason that doors, or another reason that doors need to repair is children, dogs, whatever, that actually break the door.
Right.
Actual, we'll call it physical damage. Right.
And this is, I've been called out on several of these that the kids have run through the doors. Hey, when I was a kid, we were busting doors too.
Of course.
And then when my dad got home, my head got busted.
But, your head got put through the door again.
Right. So I've been called out on a lot of that stuff, and I've seen a lot of doors that have been either chewed up, clawed up, or busted through. And if the door is there's a couple things that happen. The door does actually get destroyed, or that the jamb itself breaks
and gets destroyed,
and the lock just breaks itself right through. That kind of thing.
Yep. And so too. Now this goes back to our first comments about quality. I have very rarely ever see a hollow or a solid core door have damage I've never had one get broken through. I have seen damage from animals. Dogs in particular will scratch against them. Cats will scratch against them, and that's more a refinishing issue. But many hollow core doors, right? I mean, if you hit them hard enough, right, and you know this, John, if you hit it hard enough, what happens?
Yeah, so they're since they're glued together and they're just on a frame, you can pretty much just punch through those things. They'll punch in. They'll crack in.
They'll crack. They'll break.
And
they come unglued.
They'll delaminate.
Yeah, about a million things. I mean, I've seen them where you could, if you take a hammer and hit it, you'll go right through it. I mean, you'll literally go
absolutely.
Right through it.
You have to be careful with them. I mean, you can just tell folks, when you're swinging the door, how light it is.
Right.
So
yes. Very much so.
And then if you just hit it, it sounds like a drum.
Yes, they sound like a drum because they're hollow. They are a drum, basically. So let's talk about a couple of the things. So first off, let's let's do the simple one first. This is the simplest one, I think, in my mind. You you have your carpet changed or you put tile in, and the contractor that put the carpet or tile in doesn't trim the bottom of the door, right?
Right.
So, John, explain to the people what the process is. To me, this is a relatively simple job, right? It's really pretty simple, and almost anybody can do it if you have a circular saw.
Right. So you want to take the door off the hinges,
right?
And if you have, you put it up on a couple of sawhorses. Now, if you have a hollow core door, just know that you've probably got about maybe 1.5 inches to 2 inches on the bottom. That is the solid piece of the door that the skin of the door is bonded on. So, just know that you cut past that, you're actually into the hollow part of the door,
right? Yeah.
But generally, Larry, what you're referring to is maybe you want to take off a quarter of an inch or something, something like that, and you just want to run a circular saw down it. Just be careful of square it all up, put it up on a couple of sawhorses, square it up, and then trim the bottom of it, or. If you're good with if you don't need that much taken off, you can always use a plane.
Yeah, use a plane or
a hand
plane. Yeah,
and plane it down where you're just
literally shimming off just shavings at a time,
shaving it down a little bit, and then rehanging it and testing it. Yep. It's really not. It's the door is a bit clumsy. But they're not heavy. They're just clumsy, from a hollow core door. Now, if it's a solid door, you might want to have some help. So if it's upstairs and you take it downstairs, you don't want to be banging it down the stairwell, and then wind up doing a painting job too.
Oh, come on. That sounds like the voice of experience.
Right. And then you got that right.
Yeah, been there, done that, right? So anyway, so that's the simplest one. That's just trimming a door. Let's talk about talk about the hinges, John. So let's just, for example, you've come to realize your hinges are loose or your hinges are worn, right?
Yeah. So a couple of things happen, and I've seen this is that over time. You can actually bend a pin, from whatever activity. So, if you have a door that's swinging in or it's closing by itself, the reason there is one of two things. We just talked about it, was that the foundation has shifted a little bit, the walls have shifted, or something happened with the door, the hinges itself. So regardless of that, you can fix this by looking at how those hinges are behaving. One piece of this puzzle is that you might have a bent pin. Generally, that's not the case, but it's not a bad thing to take a look at it and punch the pins out from underneath. Take the door and make sure that the door is plumb when you put it back in. And plumb, I mean that the gaps along the door are even. A lot of times you'll see the door has got a large gap at the top, very narrow at the bottom of the left side or right side.
So that's a good indicator then, right? So if you're looking at the door and you don't have a consistent gap all the way around the door, around the three sides of the door, I should say. If you don't have a consistent gap, that's an indication that there's potentially something wrong with the door.
That's right. So so then you're going to have an uneven amount of weight, top or bottom, because the door is starting to go out of plumb. So take the hinges out and shim it. Shim the door up and make sure that the gaps are okay. Look at the level of the door, and then go ahead and shim it up to make it to close up those gaps.
So when you say shim it, explain what you mean when you say shim it.
Yeah, so we're going to put some wood, a wedge underneath the door on various sides of the door underneath, and make sure that the door levels itself out inside that frame, okay? And once that happens, and the door is level, the frame is level, okay? And that's something else you want to look at. So there's a couple of components here and that you want to take a look at. But let's assume that everything on the door frame is level, but the door has got those gaps in it. You can put wedges underneath the door at the bottom make sure that you're now that you're taking out all those gaps on the sides, okay, and then you've got the pins in the door in the hinges removed, and you'll see the hinges move. Now the hinges might not line up, okay, and that's your problem.
Yep.
Now there's one or two ways to fix that, and those hinges you can loosen up those hinges and then put a piece of like a cardboard, like a cereal box piece of cardboard behind those hinges.
Again, adding a shim.
Adding a shim, and I'm using the word shim on a couple of different things here. But you're putting a piece of cardboard to move that hinge out a little bit so that it matches up with the other hinge so that the pin will drop in comfortably in the lined up holes.
Now, one thing I want to just add here is don't forget, in most doors, there are at least three hinges. So this is not a process you do. You have to do this. You have to understand that the door is going to be a straight line. So you might have to do the middle hinge also, and you might have to shim those out as well to kind of make it all sing. But what you'll notice is it will bind. It will not. The pin won't go down in well, and the door will kind of open a little more difficultly than before, and that means you just need to loosen off the center hinge and fix it. Because most hinge, John, when we talk about this, we're talking generally about doing the bottom hinge. Is that correct?
Well, it can be top hinge, it can be bottom hinge. Generally, the center hinge is pretty good because you're actually pivoting the door
off the
sideways against the center hinge, and that's been my experience in most cases. I will say that if the cardboard trick, you can try that, okay, and line up those the hinge that's not lined up, or in some cases what I've done is use a crescent wrench, an adjustable wrench, and grab the hinge that's attached to the jamb, and use a tool like a wrench and bend that hinge slightly so that now it comes back into its alignment with the door hinge. Generally, I'd rather bend that hinge because it's into a solid piece of wood than to bend the hinge that's into these doors.
Right.
So
particularly
once you do that,
doors.
and you can do this very quickly, by the way.
Right.
So this is a great little trick that you can just use to just tweak that hinge just a little bit. Folks, it doesn't take a whole lot for these hinges to just get out of alignment just a little bit, that this door can be a real nuisance. So,
so quantify that. When you say a little bit, what are we're talking about? What? Like
we're
a
talking
16th of an inch?
16th, eighth of an inch off, and you'll start to find that door, that because of the weight, arm and moment and all the rest of the physics on it, there's a lot of weight that is on those hinges, and it doesn't take much for it to start to act on the door and move it close by itself or open by itself. So it doesn't take a whole lot, in other words.
So question, could we shoot a little video on that?
Sure.
So, all right, folks. So we will shoot sometime. Sometime we will put this up on our video site. If you go to handymanprosradioshow.com, we have a video section where we have been in the process of shooting some videos. And I think that the trick with the crescent wrench and thing is a thing we need to shoot a video for, and we'll put that out on the website sometime in the future. So let's talk about that. Those are great. So that's just getting a door that's there, that's good, that's worthwhile fixing, right?
Right, and that's one of the things. Generally, that's the big nuisance with interior doors.
Correct.
So
let's talk about Johnny and his brother are they're roughhousing a little bit, or they're trying to beat each other up. This is what happened in our house. Mm-hmm. Little Billy got his head shoved through the door, or got slammed up against the door, and the door is broken. It's toast, right? It's just not worth fixing. So let's talk about replacement of a door. And I'm sort of biased in this department, or you have a wall that's just really out of kilter. I mean, I saw this in the really, really old houses where it just wasn't worth trying to fix the door, to try to re-shim the door. It was just time to put a new door in, right? So we need to put a new door in. Tips and tricks on that, and particularly address a slab door versus a door in a casement.
So there's two types of doors that you're generally going to run into. One is a slab door, which is just the door itself, just the thing that you open and close.
Right, no frame.
No frame. And then the other is called a pre-hung door, which is the door and the entire casing and jamb. And that is all put together for you. And you generally would cut out the whole door out of the wall, out of the entrance, and just lay this thing up in there and then shim the whole thing together. Not to go into all the gory details here on this cast, but this way the whole door is fitted into the whole jamb,
the rough opening.
Right. But after you get done with that, it's all there and it fits and it works.
And it's perfect.
Now, I will tell you that if you have a relatively new house and the door, if you have to replace, go and measure the opening that you have on that. Do not throw the old door out. This is a mistake that I've seen some people make, that their door gets damaged because the kids have busted through it or threw a baseball through it or something.
Whatever,
and they said, well, I got to get rid of it. The problem is that, if you're going to repair this, you really need those dimensions, because sometimes these things can be very tailored to be put into that opening. And you could spend a whole lot of time putting in a new door, a slab door, into an the old encasement of the frame,
right?
Framing,
and
so
that's
just
where that's where my pet peeve lies. If you really have to look at the cost of the door and the casement, it's generally not very much money. It's usually 10 to less than $20 difference between a pre-hung door and a slab door. The other thing that you need, at least in my experience, is you need to be able to you need a router. And you need a jig to actually cut the hinges. Now, if you're a handyman like John and I are, we have routers and we have the jigs to do the slab doors. But for you, if you're going to do it as a DIY project, you're going to have a good router, and then you need the jig that goes to do the hinges. And there's multiple different jigs. But anyway, long story short, you're going to spend at least $20 on a jig. You're going to spend $50+ on a router. Unless you have other uses for it, buy the pre-hung door. It'll just work out better for you. And if you're dealing with an older frame, like particularly, if you're dealing with a really old house, get the whole casement, make sure the door opening itself, the rough opening as they call it, is fixed. And if it's off level or off plumb, it doesn't matter, because the casement, you can make the casement become plumb by doing shims and things like that. And there's plenty of videos out there on how to hang a door and things like that. But it's just kind of one of those things that we see it all the time, and people say, well, I want to rehang this door, and it's less money. And it's like, it's not really less money when you count your time. And so the time involved,
and that's true.
Yeah,
that's true. So not to discount our audience that knows how to use wood chisels and things, and you can certainly do that. But you're absolutely right, Larry. It's a pre-hung door in kind of an unknown. You're going to be, I'll just leave it at that. Is a better investment. It honestly is. You're going to wind up
much better product at the end.
You're going to wind up probably with less time and a better product at the end of the day. You're really just going to have to put the trim back on the casing back on the frame, which is pretty easy.
Pretty easy, really simple. So that wraps up that portion about actually replacing doors, but there is one last question I think we have out there. What sort of maintenance do you have to do to a door, John? What kind of maintenance is there?
So generally, it's just lubricating the door, the lock, if it's got a lock on it, or the mechanism itself, the handles, and the hinges. Right. And I generally use what's known as a dry lube. It's Teflon or graphite that has a vehicle in it that will carry the graphite in like an alcohol or something like that. You can buy its dry lube, and the reason that I use it on hinges is because if you use something that's an oil, number one, it can be a mess. Number two is over time, it's going to catch it's going to get sticky, and it's going to catch a lot of stuff that's floating around in the air, and there's hair and there's dust.
Yep.
And then pretty soon your hinges look like garbage, and it's like,
you've all seen them, folks. You've seen the
Yeah.
black lines in the hinges, right? It's where all the dirt and grime is collected, and you're like, ew, ew, and it's tough to clean. Basically you have to unhang the door to really clean it well, whereas dry lube does not do that.
Right.
One of my favorite things is too, when your painter comes, tell him not to paint the hinges.
Yeah. Don't paint. Do not paint. Do not paint the hinges.
They forever, people just slab paint over them. It's like, no, because it binds, and then it's da-da-da-da-da-da. And boy, you get a 40 or 50-year-old hinge, it's got paint on it. I mean, man, you're talking about a major job to get all that paint off. And then,
or we're going to wind up replacing the hinges, and then, why do that?
Yeah, right. And I mean,
you don't need to.
You don't need to. And then one other thing, too, is if you have doorknobs, particularly locking doorknobs or any types of doorknobs, there's only two screws that hold, or generally there's only two screws that hold a doorknob in. If it moves, would you turn them?
Yeah, just
tighten them up.
Just tighten them up.
Tighten them up so that they don't move, and you'll find your door works a whole lot better too. Right. So, I mean, that's
and that's true. That's true. Keep those things tight, and also the striker plate that's on the outside of the door. So
the striker plate, you want to make sure that the striker plate is tight, right, and not hanging out, because over time they do loosen up, right?
Yep.
And that's you want to make sure it's just in, and it doesn't have to be tight, but you don't want it to. It shouldn't move. Let's put it that way. Shouldn't move. All right, John. Anything else on doors?
No. I think that for this discussion, I think that covers it.
Well, I think the spaceship has landed. I guess the question is, do we look at it or do we take it apart?
Or do we take it apart?
From the email bag at questions@handymanprosradioshow.com, we received an email from Cindy M. Cindy asks, I was thinking about installing a Ring doorbell, but I hear there have been some hacking issues. Can you tell me more?
Yes. Hi, Cindy. I hope that you're listening here today. There has been some issues, and it's been in the news about hacking into these Ring doorbells or some of your cameras. Particularly, Ring has gotten a bad rap lately on it. But like any of your accounts that you have, whether it be like a Google account or something like that, anything can be hacked if they figure out your password. What you can do with the Ring doorbells is put in what's known as a two-factor authorization, which means nothing more than you give them your phone number, and before anybody can get in, it will send you a code. So if you type in your password to get into the Ring doorbell, that it will send you a code on your phone. It'll text you a number that you'll have to put in to get into it. That prevents people from getting into your account in an unauthorized fashion. So I hope that helps you do. You should try that out. It's a second level of password security that you can use for a number of accounts. I've got on a number of my accounts, as well as in terms of Google and my iPhone and so on and so forth. So you should give that a shot. Give that a try.
John, is it really something to worry about? If you put the two-factor authentication in, do you really need to worry about this? I mean, the benefits of the Ring doorbell are pretty outstanding, right? Yeah. Well,
it's once again, it's a way of keeping unauthorized people from guessing at your password. Now, a lot of people, there might be default passwords on devices, and this is the issue, and we're probably going to address this at another time, but it's part of the Internet of Things, IoT, all these things that are coming into your house that can be hacked. I mean, it's kind of funny. I mean, everything from refrigerators to toasters to it's just a smart home type of concept, and they all have passwords. They all have some default passwords. So there's a lot of mischievous activities going on out there, trying to hack into these things, and some people have been successful, especially in the video realm, with cameras and Ring doorbells.
Okay. Yep. So, folks, the takeaway here is just make sure you install the two-factor authentication, and you effectively aren't going to have a problem. Ring's not going to let this go on forever. Trust me.
Well, this is what they did, Larry. Actually, was to implement a two-factor to stop this.
And there you go.
So.
All right. Well, perfect. Well, thanks so much, Cindy. We appreciate it. And folks, if you have a question out there that you would like answered here on the show, please don't hesitate to send us a question. It's questions with an S at handymanprosradioshow.com. Or if you go to the website, handymanprosradioshow.com, there's a contact form. You can send us a question as well. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've enjoyed this podcast and have derived some value from it, here's 4 things you can do. 1, tell your friends about this podcast. 2, hit subscribe on your podcast player. While you're there, leave us a review. 3, subscribe to our newsletter by going to handymanprosradioshow.com and click on the subscribe button. We'll inform you of upcoming events, shows, and give you actionable tips for maintaining your home and property. And 4, send us an email with your questions to questions@handymanprosradioshow.com. That's handymanprosradioshow.com. That's our show for this week. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week on the Handyman Pros Radio Show.